Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for joining me. I will start out by asking you to introduce yourself and what you do.
Sure. Thrilled to be here. Thanks for finding the time. Thanks for inviting me to be part of the show. Dan O'Connell, the CEO of Front. We're a B2B support platform. I joined Front 18 months ago, and then have done a number of different things in my past career. Built a startup. I was an early Googler, and yeah, just excited to be here and chat.
So, before we talk through the path that led you to being the CEO at Front and what you've been learning about AI since then or before, I want to go back a little further. And there's a pattern that I notice when I'm talking with leaders that are adept at scaling complex systems. And it doesn't matter where they are in the spectrum as far as industry or anything like that. It's often coming down to a lifelong fascination with how things work together. And I'm curious, like looking back at little Dan O'Connell, when was your first, like, what was the first complex system that you found yourself getting obsessed with?
Yeah, you sent over a couple of questions like ahead of time. This was one of them, and I like ratched my brain thinking about little Dan, and I was thinking about doing animations in elementary school with Super Paint to date myself with Macintosh.
Wow.
But then I was like, there are two things I'm like really passionate about. One was tech, and one was sports. And I actually as I thought about this question more, it was more about the complex systems for the sports teams that I was part of, even at an early age. And it got me thinking about I've always liked to be the captain of teams. I played a sport in college. And so I naturally think of those as the complex systems of naturally there's like company building. Does everyone know their role? Who are the players on the field? Are they aligned in the mission? Do they understand the rules of the game? Do they understand the strategies? So I actually think like those were the very earliest things when I actually go back. It's not like playing with technology. It was actually playing sports and then this drive of, I don't know, wanting to be the leader, wanting to be the captain. Maybe that's why I wanted to be a CEO of how this played out.
Yeah, I mean, not playing with technology, it's literally playing with people, um,
Yep.
and understanding how to build with people, right?
Yeah.
How to build toward goals with people. That's a fantastic insight.
Yeah. Probably different. I think most people, as I've listened to a couple other folks in the show, is like, people talk about Legos or like, their
Or,
first experiences like building software technologies
uh-huh.
or instruments, like all of these things I have interest, but like when I go back to it, I'm like, oh, I think it was like the early sports stuff was like this
Yeah.
system that sparked the interest for all of these other things that I care about.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it now, I'm a content leader at an organization. It really does mean that you have to like rely on the talents of so many people coming together. And when I look back, my thing was theater as a kid,
Yeah.
right? And it's really
Probably the
about,
same for for the same thing, like putting a
yeah.
production, right? Like,
So move a little bit forward in time. We're going to talk about conversational AI. This is something that you ended up in, and it was not exactly a global phenomenon when you started at TalkIQ. Is that right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's funny to think. So we started this business, 10 years ago. Uh, I fell in love with the notion of like I had been building and scaling go to market teams. And one of the things as you're building go to market teams, everyone's always like, you got to do ride alongs, which is essentially how do you go listen to your reps and coach them. And literally you would sit side by side with people, right? Or you're going along with them to an in-person meeting, whatever it might be. And at that moment in time, it became like readily apparent that the technology was just starting to be there of you can take a call recording and you can get it transcribed and get an output. What we were really focused on was how do you do this in a streaming fashion? Because it's one thing to tape a call recording and get a transcript 30 minutes later. It's another thing to be able to do it in real time. This is a pretty novel idea. Today we see it all over the place. But again, 10 years ago, like there were very real challenges of you got to build a speech recognition engine, you got to use traditional NLP model, AI tooling to even do some of this. But it became like apparent that this was going to change the world. Fast forward 10 years and we see it. We can now do instant call recording and coaching. You see voice as the new input of our devices. This has showed up in some fantastic pieces of software like Whisperflow and voice dictation. And so that idea and I think the opportunities became apparent to me 10 years ago. And fast forward a decade, it's pretty amazing to see the opportunities they've solved and the opportunities they've created.
I mean, when you had that experience, were you thinking, okay, AI is the lane that I'm going to be in? Is this where I'm going to be holding, the future is this? Uh, was there any pushback or basically like, yeah, well, I can see it here, but it could never do this?
Yes.
Any surprising moments along the way?
I like to think of myself as a technologist, and
Mm-hmm.
meaning I cared a lot about, as I said, growing up playing sports or tying up my friend's phone line, teaching myself to program, teaching myself how to do animate, like you name it. So I like to think that I am like immersed on trying to understand the cutting edge and playing around and building things. At that point, it became readily apparent that like the challenges that were apparent then of like, can you do this in real time? Does your speech recognition model get better? So you can obviously that improves like the quality of output that you get. All of this stuff was infrastructure and computing resources that is going to get solved over time. And so then you think of like, well, then this is going to change every opportunity. It's going to change how we interact with devices. It's going to change how we interact with software. It's going to interact it's going to change how we get insights and the speed in which we get insights. And these conversations happen every day. They happen in person, they happen over a video conference, they happen on podcasts, you name it. And so I'm like, this changes everything for every industry. And that creates, I think, just massive opportunities to build some really, really big and compelling and innovative companies. And
Um, Go ahead.
I was always passionate of like building software again for sales and support teams. And so we
Yeah.
were doing it then. And you fast forward now to like, how did I get to front? Like the reason I was so compelled to front is I'm like, oh, we have this amazing platform. All of these technologies that have matured over the past 10 years open up all of these, the shuffling of the guard, changing of the incumbents, and like way new opportunities open up to build a really, really big business.
And between TalkIQ and Front, there was Dialpad, right?
Yep.
And so, and that was the hyper growth moment that you had to lead people through.
Yep.
And I'm really curious because we're on the verge of hyper growth ourselves. And, I would love to hear, what are the big lessons that you learned about managing people and processes through that? And also, like, you were, I don't know how, 18 months ago. So did you go directly from Dialpad to
To
Front?
front. Yep. I
Okay,
did.
so
Yeah.
you were like at all right, the birth of AI and hypergrowth at the same time. What was happening there? What were the big lessons you were taking?
Yeah, super interesting moment. Like what we were building, like made a pair, like at TalkIQ. Again, if you think of real time speech recognition, like the ability to understand a conversation in real time, it became apparent to me that look, like this feature ultimately shows up in every communications platform. Fast, fast forward 8 years, and you're like, you look across the landscape, and Dialpad does this, Zoom does this, Ring Central does it. All of these other businesses aren't even communication businesses do it. Like you name it. So to me, it was like readily apparent of like this is a feature. That feature is going to be immersed in these communication businesses. When we joined Dialpad, again, this was. It's funny to say, 10 years ago, you're at like the cutting edge. All of this industry is changing. It completely changed how Dialpad as a business was able to talk about their narrative as not just a phone system, but this is a system to understand conversations, to help you manage your teams better, to help you get faster insights. The piece that to answer your question of like, what did I learn on the scale and the growth that happened there? When it all came down to like alignment for people. And I think the biggest thing, two things, like one is alignment of people and the need for structure and process. And I think at times as you go through scale, like the thing people that creates natural friction with the folks, the folks that have been there for a long time is like, they don't necessarily want the structure and process to show up, but the structure and process is pretty critical, not pretty critical. It's critical for scale. And then alignment, which is like, do you have North Stars? Is everyone aligned and understanding on what we are doing, but are we also being explicit in terms of what we are not doing? I think people are pretty good at saying, here are the things we are doing, but they fail to then say this is what that means of what not to spend your time in doing. But I had another hyperscaling moment. I was an early Googler. I joined Google's a couple hundred people. I left when it was 70,000 people.
Hmm.
I was an entry level employee and mid-level manager for most of my time there. And so I'm like, you have a different experience of scale. You're on the receiving end as opposed to like the proactive building the processes. But as I said, it's always come back to those two things of like alignment and then the necessity of structure and process.
And there's a meta story here too, because this was happening as this entirely new technology to bring into work was starting to become just easily accessible to anyone,
Yeah.
right? Any lessons you took from that as you're building these
Yeah,
processes?
I think you all probably see it at Ryder. We feel it at Front. Is like the narrative can get taken. Somebody else can take away your narrative quickly, and so I talk about like speed is a really big value for us. Speed is a big value at Front, which is we have to reinvent ourselves constantly, and these new technologies create that pressure. You have incumbents that have to reinvent themselves. You have new startups that are showing up that are operating very differently. And so I think like the pace of innovation has to be there in these businesses at hyperscale, which is like another thing. Because you're like, I want structure and process. Naturally, people then think that means slowing down. Alignment
Mm-hmm.
takes time, right? Communication, meeting, making sure we're doing it. That can cost time. I then am saying like move fast on the narrative. In order to move fast and be innovative, what do you have to have? You have to have alignment. You have to have structure and process. Like that allows you the structure and process and alignment to it allows you to move fast.
Yeah. It's like the whole thing about jazz, right? You have to have
Yep.
a theme. You have to
Yep.
have that beginning, I guess, yeah, motif, and then
Yep.
you can go riff off of it. But you have to
Yep.
have the structure in
Yeah. Gotta
place
have the
too.
foundation and the basics. Yeah. And it sounds really easy. As I said, I'm probably sound like, oh, this is so easy to do. I'm like, so hard. Um, so hard. And especially when you're onboarding a bunch of new people and you're trying to make fast hiring decisions, you're trying not to offset quality, right? You're trying to maintain a quality bar. Like all of this is the very real complexities of scale.
So when you came into your role at Front, you went from building to inheriting. And what was the big lesson there? And again, I want to put this through the lens of, an AI enabled organization
Yeah.
internally, right?
Yeah.
Or because most companies are still in the process of going from experimentation to rolling things out and really adopting AI in their
Yeah.
internal process. Where's the convergence that you found yourself at, and tell me the story behind how you.
Yeah. You see me like smile and laugh. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. Um, it is really hard. I think I underappreciated it at times how hard it is to step into a business and inherit it. You inherit culture. We've been around for 10 years. You inherit culture. We have tremendous founders. One of our founders has like an amazing aura brand associated with her. So it's like big shoes to step into. So you have like that to live up to as well. But you have like the very real complexities of look like honestly like we are viewed as a legacy company, and I think many of the businesses that have been around for 10 or 15 years that are venture funded are in this moment. I think some really appreciate it. I think some perhaps aren't as like fail to recognize it or don't want to recognize it. We have to reinvent ourselves, and so that is because I think we face an existential crisis. Part of that is me narrative storytelling for it. But I'm like, those are the very real opportunities of taking over a business that's 10 years old is we have the advantage of distribution and scale. Crossed $100 million. We have 10,000 customers. But that also arguably can be a risk for us, right? Because it can slow us down from reinventing ourselves and pushing on speed and pushing on innovation. And so those are the things like, you know, we want to be seen as an AI first business. We want to be seen as the innovative challenger brand in this market. We have to work extra hard to do that. And those are the very real challenges and opportunities for us. And I think we've made some really nice progress so far.
And tell me about how you, Dan, dealt with coming into this role, and there are some unwritten rules that you discovered as you took on the role of CEO at Front. um, is there a moment early on where you kind of collided unexpectedly with that culture? Was there a moment that taught you a lesson about change management, for example?
I was very focused on coming into the business, building relationships, like finding a way to connect with every frontier, traveling to our offices, meeting with our customers. Um, we have these amazing set of values that we really live by. And I think a lot of companies put up their company values, and I'm not sure they necessarily point at the scoreboard and say, like, do we do that every day? Do we show up like that? One of our values is transparency. And we are extremely transparent in terms of we share an unedited board deck with every frontier. So they have every bit of information about financials of the business, like you name it. Creates complexities around like business acumen of does everybody have the business acumen to understand all of this? So that creates it. When I first came into the business and heard that, I was a little nervous that, and I've built a startup, done 0 to 1 journeys. And, when you're 10 people and 15 people, it's easy to be transparent. Everyone there you trust, it's really easy. At 300 employees and like a very scaled business, like I had like the nervousness and risk that was there of like, oh,
That's a
what
legal
happens?
counsel and CISO's nightmare right there.
Yes. Yeah. These are real. So what's like my natural reaction? My natural reaction was, we're going to not do this, but we're going to talk about it. I'm just not going to put the unedited board deck in your inbox to have the risk of forwarding it, whatever it might be. Tons of rightful backlash on point at the scoreboard.
Mm.
New guy is not transparent. My intention was not at all to not live by the value of transparency. I thought that I am trying to protect us. And also, hey, I'm still going to talk about all the information. I'm just not going to give you a copy of it in the inbox that might create unnecessary risk.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned from that was the frontiers were right. Didn't need to worry about it. We've never had a leak, never had an issue. I think it's so valuable to provide like that context and understanding, even if not everybody understands it. It gives us moments to coach people and guide people through the finances of a business and what some different metrics mean and why they're important. I think it provides like just an increased level of transparency and context for decision making. But that was one of my first moments that stuck out that I literally was like, massive mistake. Mathilde, who was our co-founder and former CEO, and she's the executive chair on the board, she had pinged me and she was like, hey, look, I trust you to make the decisions that best for the business, which is like what I love about our relationship. We catch up weekly. But she's like, look, if you're making decisions around transparency and they bring more questions, then perhaps you should think about whether the decision you've made is actually increasing transparency, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we got to stand up there. Dan, made a mistake. You all are right. We're going to continue to do this. And I think those create moments of humility and trust as well, which goes back to it. To be able to go back and say, like, I made a mistake, I think was more impactful for my initial entering the organization than perhaps anything else.
It's also a testament to the commitment to values of your
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
The fact that they were, you're the new CEO, and they're standing up and saying, no, these are the values,
Yeah.
and if you're going to lead us, then you have to agree to these values too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that
absolutely,
is
absolutely right. Like, as I said, I look back and like smile and laugh. I'm like, mistakes. I'm like, I made that mistake, and a couple of weeks in.
yeah. And but it also, it's a testament to that sense of trust and empowerment for your people, but it's also
Yeah.
about empathy too, of like you saying, okay, no, I hear, now I get it,
Yeah.
right? And I think that empathy is, we talk about empathizing with the user, right? When we're doing jobs to be done work
Yeah.
and product development. Um, but that really does have to be baked into the DNA of a product as
Yeah.
well as an organization. Is there Does that translate into more human centric approach to product
Yeah.
or support?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the time. Like we're building a support platform, right? That can be used
Mm-hmm.
for whether it's your customer success team or your support team. And I think we're in this natural friction in this space around look like what we're building in a perfect world would some investor would show up and say, your goal is to actually automate away these teams, right? If you have achieved if you have achieved the purpose, and I'd be like, I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what we're trying to build is I want the support and customer success person to show up every day and say, I don't have to deal with the rudimentary work. All of that is solved. And because I've taken the easy stuff away, I now get to focus on the quality of relationships and experience that I can bring to the other customers, right? For their other needs. And I think that can elevate a brand. I think it provides differentiation. And it also solves, like when you get into burnout, like why do people get burnout? It's repetitive tasks that aren't challenging or interesting. And I'm like, I think we can solve that and then elevate this experience around customer success and support to allow businesses to deliver just better and more refined experiences.
So talk us through, just kind of paint a picture of what those rudimentary, what are the burnout processes that support agents, and I'm talking about human agents, not AI
Yeah.
agents,
Yeah.
uh, are burning their wheels or spinning their wheels on every day. And then when AI steps in, how does that humanize the experience more?
Yeah, I'll talk about like our approach to building the software because I think it's interesting and different than like many of the things that just how others are approaching the problem. I mean, the biggest thing, right, for support is like you're getting the same question multiple times a day, and then you're saying, "Great, I don't have a short like why am I answering this? If this is such a problem, either we got to fix it, right? Either somebody should fix it in their product, or it's hey, we got to have a better way to answer this." And so again, like the biggest burnout to us is those repetitive tasks. Those might be questions or similar tickets that are coming in, right? It might be the insights that you're asked to gather. It might be focused on these rudimentary tasks. Like, so that's what we're really focused on. Our approach to building the software has been, look, there's two ways to think about deflecting tickets. One is you stand up a chatbot and you see where the chatbot breaks, and then you react to it. And I would argue that that experience is how many people have tried to solve that problem. And all it does is create frustration, right? We stand up a chatbot, you wait for it to break, and then you hand off to the human, and the human says, like, I'm sorry that I pissed you off. I'm now here to help you out and save the day. Um, to your point about empathy, we've basically flipped the script on that, which is you connect to us, we tell you where we have high confidence on repetitive tasks or things that we cannot fully automate, and you get to decide whether to turn them on or off. And so that means that we are only going to go automate things that we have a high confidence and will provide a really great seamless experience. And if we don't have that confidence level, we're not going to turn it on. And we think that we probably trade off a little bit of revenue growth, but what we deliver is a more controllable, more empathetic better customer experience and gives people control. And I think when we talk about like building software for I think people want control. Meaning the humans want to have a say in where it shows up, where it doesn't show up, what does that experience look and feel like. And so again, we've arguably probably traded off a little bit of revenue growth with the intention of a different way to position ourselves.
Let's go outside in, because I love I work at an AI company that's also working on empowering internally with our own platform,
Yeah.
but also, with AI in general,
Yeah.
because we gotta. And I'm sure that your company is working on the same.
Yep.
And it's not just a buzzword to say I'm AI first. It's got to be
Live and breathe
difficult
it.
and expensive decisions. And I would love to hear about a challenging decision where you had to may make a decision at front to say, okay, no, we are AI first. We are going to have to follow this path because it makes sense and because this is where the future is headed.
Yeah. Well, I think for us in the market we play in, I think it is an existential risk if we are not AI first. Meaning, and this is where I go back to a little bit of like the storytelling of like, I truly do believe the businesses that have been founded in the past 15 years, outside of the past three, like you guys are an AI first business, like we
Mm-hmm.
are not. And so we have to have that honest conversation with ourselves to say, this is probably an existential threat to us if we do not change and embrace this. We won't win the market because I think people are picking winners and platforms today for the next few years. What are you picking? What are you vetting at? Regardless of the piece of software, you're looking at an AI first business. What does that require? Got to have an AI first product, better have an AI first narrative, right? But the same matters not just for customers, but for investors, right? Whether that is to raise capital or whether it's strategic M&A that may happen. And so for us, when I think about like the space that we play in around customer experience and customer support, much like yourselves, right? This is when you talk about marketing and the different teams that you all service, this is one of the markets that gets disrupted first. The product market fit, the opportunity, it's blatantly obvious. And so we have to recognize that like this can't be a nice to have. We have to build a product. That means that we've got to think about what tools can we use to innovate faster? What tools can we use, like, right, to go help us move faster on the marketing side and the social media side? And so like this to us is like an existential risk of and necessary transformation that needs to happen.
How are you talking about it with your people? That the people that the frontiers that were
Yeah, like
there from the
like that, like
beginning.
yeah. I
That's
think
how
we
you're
get
talking about it with them.
I get a style of approach for us, and it's not about the existential. When I say the existential risk, a little bit narrative storytelling, as I said, like on these pieces, but I think it's about I talk a lot about the opportunity. And I think we have one of the best opportunities in B2B software when you think about we're building regardless of how AI plays out and argue the hype cycle or the bubble, whatever it might be, a platform for customer support and how to manage your customers is not going away. And so I remind people we're in the right market. How we live up to our potential is what I'm pushing on. And so I have to narrative storytell around the existential crisis at times. In a worst case scenario, we would likely be okay. But I think we would look back and say we were in the right market. And I think being in the right market is one of the hardest things to do when you're building software. Is like, are you at the right time in the right market, right time? And so then it's about how do you sell this inspiring vision to go capitalize and reach your potential.
So, what is the North Star that you are, I'm not saying selling, let's um, motivating your team toward that says, okay, we have reached that right star, right or right market.
Yeah.
We've hit it. We've hit that vision.
Yeah. If I like fast forward, I think about North Stars as being like a couple of years out. I'm a go-to-market leader, so I naturally think of like milestones and metrics, right? To
Sure.
tell you whether you're on a path. Uh, that's part of the journey. It's like you got to know what metrics to hit. It'll let you know if you're making progress to the goal. I think the feeling though is important. And that feeling to me is like somebody uses the piece of software, uses front and looks back and says like, I don't deal with the repetitive tasks. I don't have burnout. I don't get frustrated answering the question for the 16th time because AI has resolved that for me. And that means that I truly get to spend time focused on building quality relationships, higher value customers, right? Working on more complex problems where the complex problems like frustration shows up and regardless of how much AI may look and sound like a person, I think you want to know that you're talking to a person. That's what makes us unique. Having the empathy, having the ability to make you laugh and smile that I just think are hard for AI to go and do. We don't need to go down a rabbit hole of that. But But that's what I want people to experience with the piece of software, is to say, like, I know that I can be myself at work for my customers because this piece of software empowers me to do that. And it takes out the BS repetitive tasks that I don't want to deal with.
Now, let's work back from that then. How do you measure that, right? I mean, yes, it's efficient. There's efficiency there,
Sure.
right? Are we talking about CSAT scores? Are we talking about
Yeah.
employee satisfaction
Yeah.
scores? What
Yeah.
are we talking about?
Yeah. So CSAT's one. CSAT to me is like it's like reporting the weather, right? And so you really can't inflect, I would say, like CSAT, like it's happened. And so you're reacting to it. We're actively looking at things like resolution rates, right? And then, obviously, like utilization of our products. Like if we're delivering and telling the story, like you want to see high utilization, but then you need to see an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we look at resolution rates, which is, hey, if you're getting the same question, right, or the number of tickets that are coming in on a month, what's the percentage that we're able to achieve to take off your plate and free you up?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, again, for our business in the industry we're in, fortunately, all of support and customer service, very metrics oriented. As I say that, I'm like, I'm sure every team would tell you that, but ours are very clear
Of
on
course.
how do we reduce churn, how do we reduce contraction, what does CSAT looks like, what does resolution rate look like, how do we decrease the volume of things that are hitting your team.
And then looking again outside in on what's the North Star for your team who is building this product enabled by AI? Where's their measure of excellence?
Yeah, measure of action. Two things. First and foremost, I would say, like for any AI related feature, is utilization. Has to start there. I think a lot of people can talk about building a product and saying it in a narrative, but like at the end of the day, it all comes down to revenue. In order to get revenue, you have to be really focused on usage and adoption and maintaining that. So when we push out new things, we care a lot about what does utilization look like. Utilization will tell you two things. If you have like a lot of people expressing interest and not able to like get things set up, then you obviously have like some, either you've introduced friction in the UX UI, or it's too complex and people need services or support to go and get it set up. But then ultimately that usage and utilization should translate into revenue growth. And I think that's ultimately the measure of anything, if product market fit is turns into revenue. And we think there's an immense opportunity to see some pretty quick revenue growth and continue to inflect like the trajectory and path that we're on. We can point at incumbents that have transformed themselves in this space to do it. We can point at new startups. And so, again, we think that there is truly product market fit for what we're building out there.
And I guess you already kind of made a shout out to this, but I want to bring it back down to this question of your customers or potential customers or investors of like, well, let's just use this technology and replace a team, right? Let's outsource this human work to
Yeah.
AI. And you've kind of drawn a line there and said, maybe we don't want that business then, or we don't want that investor. Where's your line internally with Front as your people are starting to adopt AI for their own roles? Where are you kind of finding the space? Like, where's that human space versus what can be automated?
Yeah. I think it's being really clear on identifying what do we consider like low value rudimentary work. And when I say, because you'll ask that, I know the next question is like, what specifically are we talking? And so these are the things naturally, and you're like not trying to offend anybody, trying to be like open and honest on stuff. For me, it's like one of the examples that I have is like I never want somebody to write their own job description without leveraging a tool like Writer. And the reason being is like, I would argue for most things, job descriptions are quick glances that people will have. And then they've moved on to apply for it. They probably are really excited about, they're going to do some research about the company. Maybe it's the leaders, maybe it's the position, whatever it is. But spending a week to write up the job description, I would argue is not a good use of time. It's not high value. I don't think it's hugely impactful because somebody's, again, Somebody's going to glance on it, make a decision, move on their life, or get some information from some other places. The same goes for like some creative work. And when I say the creative work, press releases are one. I like doing press releases. I don't think a lot of people read press releases. So if we can acknowledge that there's probably some value to having them out there, but arguably of low value, we should not spend 2 weeks writing the press release when we can get this done through a platform in a couple seconds. And so these are the types of things where we're trying to be really intentional of repetitive, arguably low value. And that frees up the time to go work on, hey, as we go through rebranding or engaging with an agency on verbal identity, whatever it might be, that's where I want our creatives to spend the time. Some cool animation for this new video that we have coming for a big product launch, right? Or our customer advisory board and like the graphics we want to have there. Those are all the things I want people to be spending time on. The same goes for like different parts of the product as well, right? Like not all parts of the product are going to be as critical. Specific features, you want to prioritize different things. And so I think having an understanding again of like how you're positioning resources, what are the trade-offs for you leveraging different tools in different places is really important. But we've tried to be really intentional. One of we want to infuse talent in the business that is going to be AI first and bring different tools and experiences to the culture. Again, 10-year-old business, we need to infuse ourselves with new experiences. And then two, being very intentional of this is the work you're not allowed to do. This is where you have to use the tools, and being that explicit and holding people accountable to it.
It's so interesting to me as somebody who, I have a more creative role. I have a creative background. And in the business world, a lot of what I've done has often been dismissed as soft skills, right?
Yeah.
And with AI, it's fascinating to me because the stuff that they were like hiring me for before, which was the rudimentary stuff that nobody wanted to do, they were like, no, we can have AI do it. It's not that much value, but man, do we want you for your storytelling and your creativity and stuff. And it feels like I kind of want to shout from the rafters to the artist types that are saying, no, AI is, stealing our work. And it's like, wait, stop. AI is going to bring so much more value, perceived value, to the true creative process. And I imagine the same in support too, though, right? It's that soft skills, the human touch was kind of underrated during the age of automation. But now we've got AI and it's like, no. This is where truly, distinctive humanity comes into play.
There's like an interesting argument that where it's like, look, if everyone stands up chatbots and voice bots out in the world, and let's just say they get increasingly, they can increase it, fast forward 10 years and they can do all sorts of crazy complex tasks. If that's the experience every single has, then what makes a brand then unique is like the fact that you actually get to talk to somebody, and that somebody can go off the script or off the rails or just have a human moment with you. And so I think those are the things that are like in striking balance, fortunately or unfortunately for us, right? We're all in Silicon Valley, venture-backed businesses. And so like, there's this natural friction that is there. And you don't want to be seen as the laggard to say like, look, the human support really matters. I'll get picked on for saying that for sure. Somebody will be like, you're ceding away all of this opportunity around automation, and then I would argue, well, if you're so all in on the automation, what happens if it fails to live up to the hype? And I always go back to like many people will use the self-driving car analogy of like, look, we're like 14 years into self-driving cars. We can't drive in snow. We should have been further along, it seems like, given the investment and the smart people working on it. And so I go the same thing. What makes this time so different that we think that we can automate all of these really complex tasks away that require perhaps token windows don't need to get larger, but integrated systems, training data for understanding. I don't know.
And it's also, all of this kind of brings up that question mark of to what end? Yeah. You're automating everything away.
Yeah. What do we?
To what
Yeah.
end? Who ultimately, what is the purpose? Are you serving? Who are you serving in that?
Yeah.
So, that gets very existential and very
Yeah. I don't have
philosophical.
the. Yeah.
Let's get a little philosophical here. You've had some pretty major leadership roles to a point where you're going to be you've left a legacy at several organizations now. What's this personal legacy that you're building, in terms of this evolving relationship between, well, as a kid who likes to play with people,
Yeah.
right? What are you building when you're playing with those people,
Yeah.
or building a culture?
Number one, I want people to really proud to walk away and be really proud of like their experience at front. And I think that means like having high standards of people, meaning people got challenged and learned in all of the right ways. Um, we have some exceptional leaders that push on performance, and they push on performance because they care. They have a lot of empathy. So I think one of them is I want people to walk away and be like, that was a really hard environment in the right ways. It challenged me. I learned I am like a better person and a better worker because of it. And I want people to learn again, why do we push so hard on AI? It's not just to help us build a fantastic business, but it's because the next job that you get an interview for, that person's probably going to ask you what your experience is or what tools you use or what software you are using. If you don't have a great answer, I can tell you, you're probably not getting that job. So it's kind of like don't do it just for us. Do it for the next jobs that you have, the next roles that you want to go and get and aspire to be. From like a product perspective, it goes back to that feeling. There's obviously like milestones that I can go and say, I'm here because I think there's a multi-billion-dollar revenue business to build. I think we play in, I think, one of the most interesting spaces in B2B software. Um, I think it is a complete shuffling of the deck. I get super energized and excited about that. And I think we have the product and team to win. So I am excited.
That's sports Dan coming
That's
through right
sports.
there.
But I want people to look at our piece of software and say, like, that was a beautifully designed piece of software. I care a lot about design. I talked about like I wanted to be a graphic designer growing up. I used to make fake IDs in high school or download Photoshop on like 72 floppy disks to date myself. Um, but I care about the design and look and feel of software. And I think that touch point really matters. And I think people can say that they care about design. Then you look and they've got like 2 designers on staff. And I'm like, doesn't seem like you care about design. And so that's one. Two is like how the software functions, where again, I go back to like, what's that feeling that somebody's like, oh, thank God you have Front installed. Thank God I get to show up at this company and we are powering our customer operations teams, our customer service, our support teams, and sales are all using Front because I know that's a great piece of software that allows me to bring myself to work to deliver exceptional experiences. And it takes away all the rudimentary tasks that I don't want to do. And that to me is like the feel of that software. I know, and I won't pick on different pieces of software, but I know when I join a company, I do ask, what software are you on? And I get very spooked by companies that have like some software that I would deem questionable or not things that I'm excited to use on a daily basis. And I think that's a feeling.
That is a feeling. And it's so specific to the moment that we're in. Like back in the day, people would take books off of the shelf and just love the way that, it feels to turn a page, and getting them to say goodbye to books and hello to digital
Yeah.
versions of books is still a struggle. And I think that is a testament to the user interface, right?
Yeah.
The feeling of, oh yeah, this feels like home, this feels like how I work,
Yeah.
and this is this makes me feel better about where I work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a little bit of like analog that's returning in our lives of, I think you can see it in car design of people are going back to knobs and buttons, physical buttons away from just touch screens everywhere. I've got a vinyl collect downstairs. It's like my record room and music space. And I'm like, I like vinyl. Why do I like vinyl? I like the look and feel. I like having to actually get up and flip a record over. The only vinyls I will buy are records that I want to listen front to back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those are just moments. It's a different experience. And I think like those opportunities still exist, even in software, even in this digital realm.
And it cannot be automated.
Yep. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah. Thanks for having
It's
me.
great talking with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.